Welcome, everyone. We are back, episode 11 of what we are watching. I am Joey, and my co host, Big TJ, is on with me. We are going to be discussing The Sopranos Season 3, Episode 13, as well as the first 3 episodes of Season 4. A lot of stuff is happening, TJ, but how are you, first of all, my friend?
Man, anytime we get to sit down and talk about our favorite wise guys, I definitely I look forward to it. I will say, I don't know if you had planned on it, but since so many of our actors was on Goodfellas, I feel it's only right since the last time we recorded, Ray Liotta did pass. So, much love to anyone who has looked at Ray Liotta's work and enjoyed it. He was Henry Hill, and then he was also in Observe and Report with Seth Rogen. So it's just he's got a mixed bag.
Somebody on a podcast I listened to said, "What's your favorite Ray Liotta movie that's not Goodfellas?"
Are you asking me? Because I'm thinking about it now.
Yeah, I'm asking you. I don't know. He's in so many things, but I'm like, what else was he
He
in?
was in one back in the day with Whoopi Goldberg. I think it was called Karina.
Okay, yep.
And they had a young, I think it was, I can't even think of that actress's name, but that was a pretty powerful movie. Doesn't get nearly the acclaim that Goodfellas got, but you know, that's one of the first ones that come to mind. Is that one? I mean, I just later on in his career, like I always looked at him like, life's rough on Ray Liotta. It's just because his skin. I'm not used to seeing, actors age like that whenever they're, you know, a little bit of money. But him and Mickey Rourke, man, they live some life.
And he had always also entered into his phase of life, which I have mad respect for him and Nicolas Cage and Bruce Willis, who, I'm just tore up over what's happening with Bruce, but they entered the phase of their life where they want to keep working. They've still got bills, as somebody said one time. The day you become a millionaire, the post office don't stop delivering bills to your house.
Right.
And so Ray Liotta was in the Bahamas, maybe he was somewhere. He was filming a movie when he passed away, and it's one of those things. I'm sure he sets his price, and if the check clears, uh, as Michael Caine famously once said, "I've not seen Jaws 4 or Jaws the Revenge." Because I've heard it's not very good. I have seen the house that I bought for my mother, and that is very good.
I respect that right there, man. Hey, look.
He was filming Jaws the Revenge when he won an Academy Award, so he was not there to pick up his Academy Award. But he said, "I have seen the house that it paid for, and it's very nice." So
Much
nothing but
respect on that one.
nothing but respect for that. But getting into that, Ray Liotta with a future Sopranos tie-in. We haven't gotten there yet, but we will get there, and we'll talk more about that when we do get there. So, spoiler if you're following along, folks. I am aware of this. But speaking of spoilers, if you follow me, or folk, my profile is public, you can look it up, even if you don't follow me at the Joey Harris on Facebook. 2 weeks or so ago, I'm scrolling along and everybody's talking about the gas prices are high, the economy's bad, inflation, and all of that. And a picture comes up and it says, "Inflation's gotten so bad, you used to be able to afford this house on a sanitation worker from New Jersey salary." And it's Tony Soprano's house. And I laughed out loud. I shared it, I think, with you
Yeah,
and liked it and shared it and put it out there. I just thought it was funny.
it's
A
funny.
couple other people liked it. They're like, "That's funny. Move along." Facebook's algorithm says, "Oh, he must like The Sopranos," and started flooding my thing with different Sopranos, including major spoilers of stuff I was not aware of that I am aware of now. I'm not going to talk about it Talk about it when we get there. But I am highly upset. I'm just going to have you know, folks, algorithm people, Facebook people, if you're out there or if you know somebody, show them this thing. Just because somebody likes one thing does not necessarily mean they've seen everything.
Right.
And I'm like, spoilers. And I understand the show ended 15, 16 years ago. I get it. I should, but I haven't.
I think that people take for granted, you know, they just assume because we're in a binge society now, everything is streamed. So at this point, you know, they're like, "Oh yeah, you've seen Sopranos," you know. So they're just gonna just throw everything at you, and it really isn't fair because if you're a younger person, you know, or someone who just maybe just didn't watch TV like that, you know, now you're following along with us, and you run the risk of some spoilers, man. It's tough to be online and not get something spoiled.
I am a casual football fan. As I tell my wife, like if I'm at home and it's a Sunday, I'm usually don't have the game on. But if we go out to a restaurant and the game is on, I'm like, why am I looking at this? Why am I invested? Like, pass. He's open. He's open. All that, right? Doesn't care.
Right.
Doesn't care who the teams are. Right. I
Doesn't
used to
matter.
be a hardcore Chicago Bears fan,
The
and if
Bears.
they're on, I'll still pull for them, unless it's against the Panthers. The Panthers are my other team. But gun to my head on either team, I couldn't name you 10 players. I can name you probably 4 or 5.
Right.
But I have a feeling, and I know you're kind of like that too. You could follow along if you have to, but you don't seek out football. You used to, you no longer
Yes.
do, and you do you. But it is a rite of passage that everybody in America, for the most part, watches the Super Bowl. If you're into the game, you're into the game. If you're not, you're into the camaraderie because people have Super Bowl parties. I'll go for the food. Other people, I'm watching the commercials.
Commercials,
A
yeah.
lot of people are doing that, and I didn't. The one like set of downs that I watched and went into a commercial for The Sopranos, the Chevrolet truck commercial,
Right.
where they had the Jamie Lynn Sigler,
Yeah, Jamie Lynn.
yeah, recreate the opening, and then meeting the guy that played her brother. Life, yeah. So they recreate the intro to on that Super Bowl commercial, and we talked about it, and I said they should really come back with like a limited series or a movie to pick up. And I was kind of writing in my mind some of the things they can do. And they can't do that now because I didn't know that some of the things that I was thinking about can't happen.
You know, you have to tell me what some of those things are, man, because I'm like, now I wonder what kind of storylines you were looking to write in, bro.
We all know, like, regardless of what you think of the last episode of Sopranos, and we'll talk about it when we get there, that because of real life events, any Sopranos follow up, you cannot have Tony Soprano in it.
Right.
But I was thinking maybe you could have other people in it, and apparently you can't have other people in it because they're not around anymore.
I can't. I can't. Yeah, like I say, I won't specifics on storyline, man, but you know, you're
When we
100%
get there,
right. Yeah,
I'll pick it up.
dope.
And then something else we talked about last time that I did follow up on, King Vitamin cereal is no longer being made. They discontinued it in 2019.
Wow.
But I will say this: we were also right. That actor died before either one of us were born. Died in 77. I was born in 78. You were born in 84?
83.
83? Yeah. But he rocked it. He was rocking that box.
It
And they're
was
like, they
King
changed it a
Vitamin.
few years later. I'm like, I don't think they pulled all the old boxes. But listen, whomever has the rights to King Vitamin, we are prepared To bring it back, I will bring up that box of King Vitamin. The new King Vitamin is back, everybody.
That's
Put
what we
TJ's
need.
face on there. You could wear a crown. You'd be
I
the new
could.
King Vitamin.
I could an oversized crown. And I'm telling people in a little chat bubble, I'm trying to get big enough to wear this crown. Join me by eating King Vitamin. Yes.
This is for just a few people, especially for you, TJ. But this is not just for you. This is just for a small group now. Another bubble will say, King's Cup is now full of King Vitamin. That is a very narrow joke that only very few people would get. But they would get it.
Hey, they would get it. They would absolutely get it. And I hope that one of the people that gets the joke watches the episode and comments below. Good times, man. Good times.
In fact, we could work that in. Like if they didn't do commercials, you could just be sitting there with your spoon.
And my chalice.
King Vitamin. Chalice worthy. Oh goodness. Let's start in. We're talking about the 13th episode of season finale of season 3, Army of One, 39th overall episode of the series. Written by David Chase and Lawrence Connor, directed by John Patterson, originally aired on May the 20th, 2001. So when we left, Jackie Jr. was on the run. His plan had blown up in his face. He's forced into hiding at a housing project in Boonton shortly after his failed armed robbery at Eugene Pontecorvo's Saturday night card game. Jackie calls Tony Soprano at his home and tries to tell him where he is and plead for help. Tony tells him to stay where he is and to talk to Ralphie.
Don't call me no more.
Who is making the final call on what will happen. Tony don't care.
He don't want nothing to do with it. You shouldn't be calling here.
Tony refuses to intervene, saying he's had enough sentimentality over Jackie Sr. Tony then meets Ralphie, who's been hesitating over his judgment of Jackie, and asks that Ralphie make his decision in a timely fashion. In other words, you can do what you want to do, but you need to do it quick, because I'm over it.
Nobody will blame you if you do it. Just want to put that out there, right?
But again, I'm over it.
But I'm over it.
Don't bring me into it. Nobody's gonna blame you.
Nobody's gonna blame you. I'm washing my hands up.
Ralphie had already dispatched Vito Spatafor to stay near the Boontown project and find Jackie in case he tries to leave. But after the discussion with Tony, Ralphie decides to act. When Jackie leaves the apartment to get some air, he is shot in the back of the head by Vito. Meanwhile, AJ and a friend in Verbum D High School steal answers to a geometry test and are later fooled in confessing into the act by the school's principal because they peed in the corner. You can't hold your urine 5 minutes.
So I'm sitting here and I'm watching that and I'm sitting here thinking like, AJ, you've already been in trouble. The very monotone headmaster of the school said, if you have one more infraction, then everything is coming back into play. So I'm like, what in the hell, AJ? Like, take the extra 35 to 45 minutes you put together to hatch this dumbass scheme and study. Because look, he said, we can't go anywhere till the janitor leaves at 8. Old buddy is like, I gotta go. So he just starts pissing. And AJ, well, now I gotta pee. What? Your bladder succumbs to peer pressure, AJ. Like, really, bro? We ran the DNA analysis, and then they just, both of them start snitching. Both of them start snitching so fast.
He peed first.
He peed first. Like, bro, y'all, God, these small-time crooks are not ready for any of some of the gravity that his father holds on to, man. But AJ's he's feeling his way out, man. He's feeling his way out. And from what I'm noticing, and a line that we're going to hear from Meadow a little bit later, he's honestly heading in the footsteps of one Jackie Jr.
Oh, Absolutely. Because he was, Jackie was helping him some with the football and
Yep.
other things. So he's somebody he looks up to.
Yep.
AJ is promptly expelled. Tony becomes enraged when he hears the news and decides to save AJ before it's too late. He doesn't want him to go down the same path because of everything that's happening with Jackie Jr. His solution is to send his son to military school. Carmela receives a phone call from Marie, Rosalie April's sister, informing her that Jackie's been shot and killed by drug dealers. Tony uses Jackie Jr.'s death as an example for AJ to start straightening up by telling him, you see what happens.
You see what happens? 6 Degrees of Separation, we have a character being introduced a little bit later that I'm super excited about. Ties to Goodfellas and a movie franchise that's going to come later on. So, I guess we'll get to that when we talk a little bit further about AJ going to military school. But that scene, Tony's already got issues that he's dealing with in the work front, and he doesn't do a good job of separating work,
right,
because he came home when he gets the news about AJ, he was already pissed, talking about how he had his mouth turned up for that lasagna and somebody ate it, so he was already hot, and then he gets the news, so he came home with that anger because he can't get people to do what he wants them to do. He can't get Ralphie to act like he wants him to act. He can't get Paulie, who's bothering him because of some side deals that he's got with Ralphie that's not going out in his honor in his favor. So it's just a lot going on, and Tony's not doing the best job of separating it, but AJ's making it awfully difficult.
Right, and let's get into that because that's the next part of the review. Paulie demands that Tony have a sit down with Ralphie and him. When the request is finally honored, Paulie states that he gave Ralph valuable information about a job that Ralphie's crew subsequently pulled off, which Paulie feels he's entitled to half of the take, $50,000 out of $100,000. Tony listens to the case and ordered that Ralphie turn over $12,000. Much to Paulie's shock and dismay, when Paulie tries to convince Tony to reconsider, Silvio intervenes, stating that Tony has made the decision and the sit down is over. Silvio's like, nope, we're dropping it.
Right.
It's done. Uncle Junior's cancer is in remission, leaving him physically competent for the RICO trial, and his house arrest has been canceled. With Big Pussy Bonpensiero missing, actually deceased, Agent Dwight Harris recommends that they should start looking for any incriminating information via Christopher Moltisanti, who was moving through the ranks ever closer to Tony. Bureau Chief Frank Cubitoso enlists Agent Deborah Cicerone on an undercover mission to befriend Chris's fiancée, Adriana, and report back on whatever she can find. You got to find somebody close. It's always somebody close, because he feels like you'll never get Christopher to turn.
Right. Big time facts. Big time facts. I first going with Paulie, Paulie, I think, was pressed to get the sit down to go in his favor because he's trying to get his ma in the Green Grove, and he's due $40,000 by the end of the week to get her in there, and he just wants to be a good boy. And he's fighting for it. He had a guy to throw into the job. Ralphie and his crew left the guy standing there. So, Paulie really has no claim to this money outside of the information that he gave. But the thing about Ralphie is, and I think this is one of the most funniest scenes that you'll have in this episode, you got Ralphie sitting there with Paulie and Sil, and he has Vito call him to play like Tony. I mean, come on, Vito's sitting there reading off the stuff that he sees. I see a rat or a squirrel. I don't know the difference. but Ralphie's playing it up. I mean, that was just too damn good. It was funny. It was really, really funny. And then them bringing in this agent to attack Adriana, understanding that they can't get Chris. And then the little side comment that the other agent says she's just used to getting coffee or something like that. And then the guy in charge is like, well, how did you start? And that just shut that down. Like that just shut that down. So
Right.
it's even though the show is dealing with a lot of drama and a lot of dramatic situations, I think that we can appreciate some of the humor that gets sprinkled into there.
Oh yeah, absolutely, absolutely. Um, so AJ is taken to an appointment at the Hudson Military Institute with the military school's administrator, Major Zwingli, who lays out the basic schedule for students at the school. This includes an 0530 wake up, 2200 lights out, evening study, drills, and no television. Zwingli has a talk with Tony and Carmela about the rigorous program and how he believes it will benefit their child. Carmela is still concerned since she believes they are training him to be a professional killer. Tony tries to convince her that their son would be learning discipline and respect, not violence. At Jackie's wake, the grieving Rosalie and her daughter Kelly are visited by the Sopranos. When Meadow sees Jackie lying in his casket, she begins to cry uncontrollably. Tony and Carmela try to comfort her, but are embarrassed when Rosalie notes the low attendance rate. The funeral has coincided with Super Bowl Sunday, a busy betting time. When everyone settles down, Carmela views Jackie lying in his casket. That night, Carmela decides to support Tony's decision to send AJ to military school because she doesn't want him to go down.
Absolutely. So we get that comment from Meadow right before the wake where Meadow is saying, Jackie oftentimes talked about how his parents didn't care. And those are some things that we can see with regards to mirroring what the way that Carmela and Tony look at AJ. But one thing that I said I was going to say something about it. They go to the school, and who is sitting behind the desk interviewing AJ? Jigsaw, aka you want to play a game, aka the greatest defense attorney in the business. A young Henry Hill in Goodfellas looked at a younger Jigsaw to get him off. So there's your 6 degrees of separation right there. For anybody who did not know, yes, Jigsaw was in Goodfellas. But yeah, I thought that was cool, because it's Jigsaw. He's talking about discipline. I'm like, he's typecasted, man. He's just trying to get everybody to do the same thing.
So, as AJ prepares to depart for the military school, he puts on his dress uniform. Tony urges him to put on the military hat that came with the uniform, but AJ resists. Tony, agitated at the insubordinate attitude, gets off the sofa and approaches his son menacingly. AJ complies and puts on the hat. AJ then looks at himself in the mirror and, in tears, asks not to be sent away. Tony tells him to stop and reaffirms his decision, saying that he needs toughening up. AJ promptly suffers a panic attack and collapses. And I'm not laughing at the panic attack and collapsing. I'm laughing at the point of then it flashes to Tony talking about it in his therapist's office. Tony relates his dismay to Dr. Melfi that AJ has inherited his psychiatric affliction and becomes teary. But he also says, apparently this has been happening and they didn't let us know. And I'm sitting there thinking, you know what? They never did say that they had. So he's like, this guy's been passing out and they didn't tell us.
As far as Tony and Carmela is concerned, AJ has never passed out before. And little do they find out, yes, he did. He passed out at football practice.
At football practice.
Is look, how many different things can happen at a football practice where you definitely need to let the parents know that your child was unconscious on the field, heat exhaustion, he could have had a concussion, any number of things. Then, he was just dehydrated, so we're not going to tell the parents. Get out of here. Come on. But yeah, look, AJ, look, for anybody with young kids, let this be a preparer for you because AJ talks a lot of shit. Okay? And when told to put that hat on, he was extremely upset with the way that he looked, and he knew getting sent away meant that his life was about to change drastically. And what happens when forced to look down the barrel of the gun? He passed out. So let that be, a record for you parents out there, man. Kids are fun.
He says there was a story back in Italy about his father's great-grandfather who suffered a panic attack and lost control of a donkey cart, plummeting to his death. Tony says it is the dreaded soprano gene.
The soprano
Because,
gene.
again, he learned about his father. He learned that it would happen to his father. As a result of the panic attack, it was determined AJ was not physically qualified to enter Hudson Military Academy. Tony fears that his son is headed towards an uncertain future. Tony doesn't want his children involved in any way in the business. He doesn't want Meadow near the business, even though to him, like, a woman would never be in the business, what he told.
But she's the one that's most prepared.
Absolutely. But like I said, if they ever did that, I would take that dialogue from season 2 and just put it over there. This would never happen in America. You know, when he's in Italy making the deal that ends up sending Furio to America. But he definitely doesn't want AJ in there. And he says it later on. He says it later on in season 4. We'll get to it. Probably not this episode, but probably next episode. That's how he looks at Christopher as another son. But this will be the son that goes in the business. He doesn't want AJ or Meadow anywhere, like, not associated with the business, not adjacent to the business, completely out.
And I think that goes back to his mother. He always says that he didn't have a choice. And that would be because his father tried to get out and go to Vegas. And his mom said, no, I would much rather smother my children than let you take them
I would
away.
rather smother my children.
So Tony feels like, okay, he had no choice. A choice was made for him to follow in his father's footsteps. Even though, you know, he went to college and the whole nine, that doesn't matter. He went to Seton Hall. It was only for, a semester and a half or whatever. But he was destined for this. He is trying to go the opposite way with his kids and not even give them the opportunity to be involved with it at all. So, but again, Meadow, how dare you speak of this in front of an outsider? Like, yo, she is to me, you know, just hands down the best mixture of Tony and Carmella. The best, just boom. And it was evident in that episode. If you ever wanted to feel proud, you know, to see her stand up for her own, because even though she feels exactly like Jackie's sister feels about it, she's not going to say it at the wrong time. She'll bitch at the house. She won't say it outside.
Right. And we saw that very early on in the college episode. She knows what was happening with her dad. She saw the hands, she saw the feet and stuff like that. And we talked about that. AJ wouldn't have even noticed, or if he did notice and ask about it, he would have totally accepted Tony's explanation, because we also saw, like, the episode before that, my dad is a hero. When the teacher gets the car back, my dad's a hero.
Doesn't even take the time to pay attention to the fact that car has paint on it it's clearly not the same car. It doesn't matter. My dad's a hero.
We talked about it at the time. There's that other teacher, like, this ain't even the same car. My dad's a hero.
My dad's a hero.
So on the day of Jackie's burial, Christopher and Sylvia are arrested at the cemetery for illegal gambling. Uncle Junior, just arriving for the funeral, witnesses this and promptly runs back to the car, almost leaving Bobby Bacala behind. After the burial, a small group of people return to Rosalie's to comfort her. There, during drinks, Meadow is involved in an argument with Jackie's sister, Kelly, about the most likely cause of his death, and that's where we talk about it. Kelly states that members of the mafia and their families are involved in killing him, while Meadow defends the version previously instilled in her by her mother that the illegal drug trade claimed his life. And again, why are you talking about this with an outsider present? The funeral attendees then proceed to Vesuvio for a luncheon. At the restaurant parking lot, Paulie encounters Johnny Sack and expresses his contempt for Tony's ruling in Ralphie's favor, telling Johnny to offer his services to the New York family boss, Carmine Lupertazzi.
Lupertazzi, yeah.
Back inside, Janice Soprano is flirting with Ralphie, who is
Hard.
who had distanced himself from Rosalie
Yeah.
since her son's death. When Silvio and Chris enter the restaurant, having quickly made bail, encouraged, Junior begins to sing the Italian love song. I can't pronounce it, but it's "Ungrateful Heart" in English.
Yeah.
But it's a really beautiful moment when he gets up because he's encouraged, and so everyone is touched except for a very drunk Meadow, who throws pieces of bread at Junior as he sings, and the look that her parents give her, especially her father.
Hey, can
Yeah,
we talk about it? I mean, bro, we're all sitting here clamoring for Junior to sing, taking into consideration that just 2 years ago he gave the green light for Tony to be killed. Like,
right.
bro, like how quickly we forget. It's not like you had him kneecapped. You didn't take him out to the Meadowlands and make him poop himself. You gave the green light to have this man put down, and now you're singing, and I'm just supposed to just sit here and enjoy it. Not to mention, just a couple seasons ago, when Big Pussy took off running from the feds. We don't run. It makes us look bad. What did Junior do at that funeral? That bitch ran. All right. But yet he said to Big Pussy, we don't run. So
Right.
it's funny. These moments, that's why I say if you pay attention to the lines and then you see how people react, man, it's pretty awesome writing.
And we talked about this before we started recording. Paulie, we talked about the actor. He didn't want to be. I'll do anything. I don't want to be. I don't
Don't
want
want
my
to be a
character
rat.
to be a rat. But how now? Maybe you can justify it. I think that was the word I was searching for.
Yeah.
That I'm not ratting out to the feds, but
Right.
his behavior to me, but you can justify anything in your mind. This is how I react because of the way I've been treated. I felt like I was treated unfairly. I went about the right way to do it and didn't like the response that I got. And then was shut down. It's over. He's made his decision. So then you put out a little feeler to Johnny Sack. Hey, I wouldn't mind, working for the New York crew, just planting that little bitty seed that's going to
Just to,
propel us into the next season. A very compelling. So Meadow leaves the restaurant and is confronted by her father outside. She tearfully denounces the funeral proceedings as bullshit and runs across the street, almost getting hit by traffic as Tony looked on concerned. Tony returns to the dinner, quietly telling Carmela that Meadow likely is headed back to her college dorm. He then puts his arm around AJ as the three listen to Junior sing. So that's how we're left with season 3. To me, setting up season 4 really, really well, but not the explosiveness that was season 1 and season 2. I feel like it sets it up well, but they had to detour with the actress who played Livia passing away because the season was originally set up was, is she going to testify against her son? Yes or no?
I think she would have ended up passing away in the finale.
Mm-hmm.
However that happens, but you don't want to kill a person that died in real life, man. You don't want to do that. Not kill them. You kill them off. You kill off the character like they did.
Sure, yeah.
You don't put a hit out on them, out
Right.
of respect, right? But you're right with your overall synopsis of the finale. I think it gave us a lot to look forward to in the other seasons with regards to Ralphie, with regards to Paulie's relationship. Now that we know somebody has been assigned to Adriana, so what's that going to be about?
Right.
And then again, looking at the Soprano household, that wedge that we saw beginning to come in between Carmela and Tony has not gone away. And still, we're going to call it a Cold War. There's
Right.
not active fighting, but there's still some animosity there. And then the issues with AJ and Meadow, how are they going to be, as far as adults? Are they going to somehow steer towards the family or away from it? Is AJ still going to continue to make dumbass decisions? These are the questions that we have to ask going into 4.
Yeah, and so we get our first appearances of Paulie's mother moving into Green Grove,
Mhm.
and also Agent Deborah Cicerone, an FBI agent assigned to go undercover as Adriana's new best friend, and as well as pouring one out for Jackie Jr., shot by Vito in the back of the head, but was definitely headed that way. I felt for his mother. I felt for that character there. And something happens. It'll probably be 2 episodes from now, but something happens in season 4 where my respect for that character goes from here all the way up to here. Because I'm like, she did something that I would not have done. We'll talk about it when we get there. So a little teaser for probably a couple of episodes from now.
If I can do one last quick thing before we leave this episode, because I know we're getting ready to go into season 4, episode 1, but I believe it's Michael K. Williams. I believe Williams is the last name. He was the actor who made a cameo at the house that Jackie Jr. was staying at in Boonton. Great actor, went on to play Chalky White in Boardwalk Empire, as well as being made famous playing Omar in The Wire, which is another show that I look forward to doing with you. He passed away last fall. So
yeah, I was about to say I knew that he had passed away, but I knew it had not been that long ago.
Yeah, he passed last fall. So definitely want to take a moment to say something about him when we got to that point. So thanks.
So we do have some production notes for this episode. In the original 2001 broadcast, Agent Deborah Cicerone was played by actress Fairuza Balk. However, due to scheduling conflicts, she was not able to return for season 4. For the repeats and DVD releases, Balk was replaced by Lola Glaudini, who went on to play the role permanently in 2002. This is the final Sopranos episode to feature the Twin Towers of the World Trade Center in the opening credits due to the 9/11 attacks that led over 2,000 people dead or injured. In references to prior episodes, Tony and Carmela watched a commercial for Dr. Freed's urology clinic, whose production was featured in the previous episode. Dr. Freed tends to Furio's gun injury. Although it is never explicitly mentioned in the episode, Jackie Jr., Vito Spatafore, and Adriana are cousins through their uncle Richie. April, when Vito's brother Brian is injured in the episode, Another Toothpick, Jackie Jr. says that Brian is his cousin.
Yep.
And when Tony and Carmela are arguing over AJ being enrolled in a military academy, Tony says that this is the 21st century and the Army hardly goes to war anymore. Tony's statement was an ironic one. 4 months after this episode aired, the United States was hit with its worst terrorist attack yet. 2001 was also the same year U.S. forces entered Afghanistan in an attempt to root out the 9/11 conspirators. So just a strange comment at the time was true.
Right.
4 months later, how things can change. But then we go into the first episode of season 4, For All Debts Public and Private. The 40th episode overall, written by David Chase and directed by Alan Coulter. It originally aired on September the 15th, 2002. AJ has started at a new private school, and Carmela is trying to help him by reading excerpts from the New York Times provided by his school for his social studies class, which lay unopened in his room. Tony Soprano collects the Star Ledger at the end of his driveway, again in his robe. It's
beginning of every season.
Every season, he's in that bathrobe. And once back to the house, asks about AJ's grades and clips his ear when AJ tells him that he has reveled in his own ignorance by asking about grades only a few days into the term. AJ got a mouth on him.
He does.
Doesn't always know when to keep it shut, but definitely has a mouth on him. Carmela's mood visibly brightens when Tony's driver arrives, but her smile fades when he sees it's Christopher instead of Furio. Christopher is none too pleased to be driving Tony, but claims not to question his decision. While driving, they both check rearview mirrors for car models known to be favored by the FBI.
There's a Chevy.
Tony and Uncle Junior meet in the office of Dr. Douglas Schreck's Jr.'s physician. Christopher, Bobby Bacala, and Murph Lupo remain in the waiting room. Murph, my new favorite minor character. He just cracks me up every single time he's on there. I love to see the minor characters.
Murph is shifty.
Before entering the room, Junior flirts with the nurse by inviting her to Atlantic City, but she declines. The nurse later informs him that it's her last day at the office as she is going back to school. Tony and Junior discuss the latter's need for more money to cover his mounting legal costs, being short on cash ever since his house arrest, and request changing of their terms. Junior has an itemized bill for everything. Look at what they're charging me here. You seen this phone call? Later on, I enjoy, like, why does everybody need their own copy? Make one copy, we'll pass it around.
Look, Johnny Sack said it well when he overlooked a sit down with Junior and Tony. Johnny Sack said, "Junior, if there's a fly on you, you're charging them rent." So Junior knows where his money is going for sure.
Tony tells him of a shortage and angrily refuses to change the percentages. Tony suggests that Junior gets his Shy running right. His Shy is his illegal money lending business, folks. Junior later decides to demote a noticeably confused Murph to soldier. Murph is like, what did I do?
What did I do?
And replaces him with Bobby Bacala. Tony approves and proposes that they tell Bobby of the news right in the doctor's office. Later that night at Junior's home, his lawyer calls and speaks to Murph, who relays information that the FBI apparently has had a mole in Dr. Schreck's office who has been pulled to testify at his trial. And Junior is visibly upset at himself. He should have seen it. He knows that it was the nurse, and she was like, "Oh, she's going back to school, whatever." He should have seen it. He's upset at himself. Carmela notices widow Angie Bonfensera handing out free samples at a Pathmark supermarket, but does not approach her. So now Carmela's worried about money, as Tony is careful to always separate her from his professional contacts. When she asks Tony to provide money so she can make an investment, he tells her they need to belt tighten and that there's no longer a large amount of money kept in the house. He then removes a large bag of cash from under his car seat and takes it into the pool house to store it in a hidden hole under a stone floor tile. So Tony's squirreling away money.
Mm-hmm.
After he had gotten his money back from his lawyer, it was $400,000. Remember, it went from, if she comes and asks for all of it, you give it to her.
Give it to her.
Now you're talking about that Cold War that you're talking about. So not outright hostilities, but starting in this season, there's definitely moves made along the front on both ends.
Both ends, 100%.
Tony has Chris taken to the Bada Bing, where he vents his frustration by beating up hapless barman Georgie for wasting ice and talking out of turn. Georgie does not understand. Tony, you got to take the ice out. You got to move it.
George, I feel for George.
Georgie's like, maybe you didn't understand what I'm saying. He launches into it again.
I feel for Georgie, man. Like, we gotta. I mean, everybody watching has to feel like anytime they go to the Bing and I see Georgie is in the scene, I get tense for that guy, man, because they go to work on Georgie, bro. Like, how long is Georgie gonna sit there and take it? Because ultimately, he's just the whipping boy for whenever something goes wrong.
I feel like Georgie should be like, there's a Chinese restaurant near where you and I both used to work. I don't know if I've ever told you this story. It was infamous, folks. Everybody got their thing because they had an older gentleman who would deliver it to you, who would scream at you to come get your food. One day I'm in there getting food for my now ex-wife and I had already ordered. I had already paid. I was just sitting there waiting for them to make my thing. The old man, and I'm assuming either his son or his grandson, I never got the relationship. Right. They get into a verbal, just all-out smackdown fight, screaming at each other. Me and another guy who's also paid, we're like looking like, what's going on? I'm like, I would leave, but I seriously have paid. The girl who's there, who usually handles the register, she's trying to break it up. The guy who cooks, is just concentrating on his cook. He's like, happens all the time. This rice ain't gonna cook itself, and he's over there. I mean, he's doing his thing. I feel like that's how Georgie needs to be. Like, I don't know anything. Yeah, boss, you need the ice done? No problem. Never happen again. I feel like that's how Georgie needs to be. Just like that cook. I don't care what's going on here. These drinks are not going to make them.
That's it. That's it. Let me make these drinks and protect the 3 same girls that's always working behind me.
Because they'll always remember wherever they were.
Because they're going to remember where they were. 100%. I will remember where I was this day.
Chris, Silvio, and Tony depart the Bing on foot to attend a meeting with the family's capos, Carlo, Allie Boy, Ray, and Ralphie, in a neighborhood industrial garage owned by the family. Ralph is still persona non grata at the Bing. Tony uses the meeting to harangue them about the lack of growth in the family's business as of late, telling them that the family's boss, Junior, desperately needs their financial support. Christopher is left outside with fellow soldier Vito while the other senior family members have their discussion. Chris believes his return to driver status may be punishing for questioning Tony's judgment about the Jackie Jr. situation. So Chris is all up in his head. At home, Adriana is with Danielle, who, unbeknownst to her, is an FBI agent, Deborah Cicerone, living with her husband, fellow FBI agent Mike Waldrop, who
AKA
got to stop.
Lego Batman.
Joe Bluth. A magician named Gob.
A magician named Gob.
Who, every time I see him, the final countdown goes off in my head. Da-da-da. And their infant son. They are married. They're both FBI agents. They have an infant son. Christopher arrives home with several pieces of high-quality luggage, where Danielle asks, since it looks like Gucci and has transport tags still in place. Christopher notices Danielle's nosiness, but deals with her in a rude manner. Danielle leaves in a huff, although Adriana apologizes. When she leaves, she reprimands Christopher for his antisocial attitude. He complains about a sudden demotion to Tony's driver and prepares to inject heroin between his toes, as to avoid noticeable tracks on his forearms. He offers some heroin to Adriana, but she declines. And he puts down, he's like, she's interested in you. You know, he calls her a lesbian. He does not use that term, but, you know, very antisocial about the whole entire thing. And then immediately goes to the heroin. Later, Tony buys bags of duck feed. So we're back on the duck. When he gets the bags home, he uses them to store cash amongst the feed. Carmela notices that it's an odd time to buy duck feed.
Right. But
while out buying
notice,
the feed, yeah.
If you notice, earlier in the episode, he had thrown bread out there, and the bread had gotten wet. Meadow slipped on a piece of wet bread. So, if anything, he's planting seeds for why he's now going to buy duck feed, because he tried to do bread, and now he needs duck feed. I'm just saying, he tried to put it out there. Tried.
While out buying the feed, Tony meets with Assemblyman Zeldin at a nearby cafe to discuss the Esplanade project and talk about real estate. Zeldin tips him off that prices near the new project are likely to see a huge jump. Tony recalls that Junior owns a large warehouse in Newark that could potentially be a gold mine. So Junior's got money problems. Tony sees this. He's putting 2 and 2 together. Carmela invites Rosalie, April, and Ralphie over for dinner, despite Tony's instructions not to. Tony still does not want Ralphie in his house.
Not big time facts. Tony also does recognize that his sister is making moves on Ralphie. So why do you want to invite Rosalie and Ralphie, knowing that Janice has got her mitts in, it's a whole mess.
Rosalie is withdrawn and quiet over dinner, presumably on mood-altering drugs. Look, in the past 2 years, if I'd lost my husband to cancer and then my son was killed, shot in the back of the head, regardless of his drug dealers or own family or what have you, I'd be on some stuff too. I don't
Heck
know how
yeah.
I'd put one. I don't know how I'd put one foot in front of the other. Like I said, something happens later on, folks. I'm like, that row is something else.
She's strong.
In contrast, Ralphie tells stories to AJ and a friend about a Harley Davidson motorcycle he owned in his youth. Hugh and Mary DeAngelis also attend. That Hugh is something else, talking about his bike. Ralphie excuses himself to use the bathroom, and Janice soon follows him, finding him snorting cocaine. She joins him, and after some initial hesitancy on Ralph's part, they have sex in the upstairs bathroom. Now, folks, if there's kids present, they shouldn't be watching this anyway, but if so, send them out of the room. Ralphie and Janice have apparently never heard of the phrase, do not shit where you eat, and they are literally doing that. Literally. While they are away, Tony notices their long absence by looking at both their empty chairs and his wristwatch. During the dinner, Adriana, accompanied by Danielle, visits to borrow a samovar from Carmela for Adriana's cousin's bridal shower. Tony is introduced to Danielle and is visibly attracted to her. Rosalie then shows her around the Soprano house. Meadow does not attend the dinner. Since Jackie Jr.'s death, she has fallen into a depression. Her sophomore term is just around the corner, but she has failed to register for any classes. Carmela has admonished Meadow for her lethargy, saying that she did nothing during the summer save for lounging by the pool. When Meadow says she used the time for her summer reading list, Carmela asks if Meadows' professor must want her to do a thesis on Mary Higgins Clark because she was the only writer whose books Meadow had been seen reading. Later, when Meadow realizes that it's now or never, many of the classes she intended to sign up for are full. The registrar remarks that she lucked out at enrolling in one class that has open seats, whose subject is ethics and philosophy. Tony throws a party in a hotel suite preceded by a quick meeting with New York boss Carmine Lupertazzi. Christopher, Ralph, and Silvio also attend. Carmine discusses the success of the Esplanade, asking about Junior, and chastises Tony for wearing shorts. A Don doesn't wear shorts. After hearing this from Johnny Sack, who is also present, Carmine and Johnny Sack leave while Furio arrives with a bevy of Icelandic air stewardesses. Christopher smokes a heroin-laced joint in the bathroom with one of the girls. Ralph sleeps nude on the couch wearing a stewardess's pillbox hat. Christopher is worried when Tony bangs on the bathroom door and has him leave the party early. Tony has Christopher drive out to a Hooters restaurant in Wayne, New Jersey, where Bobby Bacala soon pulls up behind them. Tony has been seen talking about Dickie Monksada, Christopher's late father, all day. Tony suddenly tells Christopher that the man who killed his father, Detective Lieutenant Barry Haju, is in a restaurant having his retirement party from the police force. This has far-reaching implications, folks. Tony says that Dickie and a gangster named Jilly Ruffalo had served time together. Jilly kicked Dickie's cellmate, so Dickie later took out one of Jilly's eyes. Haju murdered Dickie for Jilly outside the Moltisanti's house. Christopher was always told it was a police officer that killed his father, but he believed that the man was dead. When asked why this hadn't been dealt with already, Tony answers that he was useful, but that this ended today with his retirement. Tony gives Christopher Haju's address, wishes him luck, and drives off in Bobby's car. Bobby and Tony eat dinner at a local diner and discuss Bobby's promotion and how he has coped with his own father's death. Afterwards, they go to Junior's house where Murph meets them in the basement and tells of the FBI mole. Bobby's wife, Karen, has come over with the children to prepare a meal for Junior. The existence of the mole has deeply upset Junior. He believes it must have been the nurse with whom he's flirted and now regrets the humiliation that he will have to face her across the courtroom. They discuss what the FBI may have learned from the ploy. Tony offers Junior $100,000 for his warehouse lying to him that it's to help him with his financial difficulties. Junior accepts the offer, but is despondent about life, telling Tony that he's an old man who is going to trial. Meanwhile, Paulie Walnuts has been arrested in Youngstown, Ohio on a gun charge, hence his absence from the earlier meeting with Tony Silvio and the other family capos, while en route to Steubenville to see Dean Martin's birthplace. From a jailhouse payphone, he calls Johnny Sack, who tells him that nobody has mentioned to him while Paulie was in prison, just that he was. Paulie is bothered by this and relates the story. He was visiting a friend, Lenny Scortese, and they got caught with a gun from an unsolved homicide in their car. Johnny seems keen to cultivate his friendship with Paulie that began after Paulie started to feel neglected by Tony in favor of Ralph with the Esplanade project. Johnny reaches out to Paulie through his nephew to request the phone call. So Paulie is keeping this in the back of his head.
Yep.
In therapy, Tony discusses Carmela pressuring him over the family's future and Uncle Junior's current situation. When Tony discusses his future in terms of two endings, death or prison, Dr. Melfi is initially shocked by his candor and asks him why he doesn't just give it up. Tony tells her there's a possible third option and that he has plans to avoid either outcome by relying solely on blood relations, bonding Christopher ever stronger to him using methods he cannot disclose to Melfi, so as to use his nephew as a buffer between himself and others to avoid any potential future prosecutions. Dr. Melfi is baffled by Tony's unexpected frankness, to which he replies that he now trusts her a little.
I mean, they've discussed so much, right. So it's only a matter of time before the floodgates were going to eventually open, and Tony was not going to be able to keep that separation between his personal life, his professional life, and what he really does and what he doesn't want to share with her. It was only a matter of time before that came out. This episode had a lot going on. You're talking about starting off a new season. We're getting into it.
Oh, absolutely. Christopher waits inside Heiju's home and knocks Heiju unconscious when he walks in. Christopher takes his gun holster, service weapon, and badge and handcuffs him to a banister and on the staircase. When Heiju regains consciousness, Christopher questions him about his involvement with his father's death. Heiju denies all knowledge and says Christopher is being set up. Christopher replies that it doesn't make any difference because he wants you dead. Christopher turns up the volume on the television. Heiju panics, breaks the wood banister, and tries to flee, then ends up scurrying across his floor and tripping, being recaptured by Christopher. Heiju makes one last plea for his life, asking if Christopher really wants to become a wanted man for killing a cop. Christopher fails to be swayed by that and fatally shoots Heiju with his own firearm. Before leaving, he takes the cash from Heiju's wallet, although he expresses disgust that all he was able to steal was a single $20 bill. Wipes off the gun and places it in Heiju's hand. Later that morning, Christopher goes to visit his mother, Joanne. He attempts to be nice to her by saying he found an old picture of Dickie Moltisanti when he was in the Navy and thought Joanne would admire it. Joanne, however, has more pressing concerns, dropping hints that she knows her son is a drug user. Christopher asks if she ever misses his father. She replies, "Did I ever saddle you with a stepfather?" As he leaves, he uses a magnet to attach the $20 bill to his mother's refrigerator. Now, a lot of stuff going here. I'm going to go into the title references and some production notes, and then I'll get your thoughts. The episode's title is taken from a phrase found on American paper currency. This note is legal tender for all debts, public and private. The episode ends with a close-up of a $20 bill that Christopher takes from Lieutenant Barry Heiju after he kills him. Money is also worried for Tony, Carmela, and Junior in the episode. Christopher is now indebted to Tony for the information Tony provided about Christopher's father. Production. This episode was the first one to be made and aired after the September 11, 2001 terrorist attacks. From this episode on, the shot of the World Trade Center towers in the opening credits is absent, replaced by additional shots of industrial scenery before reaching the toll booth. Johnny Sack, Vince Curatola, is now billed in the opening credits, but only for the episodes which he appears in. Paulie's prison stay was written into the series to allow more time off for actor Tony Sirico, who was recovering from major back surgery.
Hmm.
The wrestler Johnny Valiant appears in this episode as Carmine Lupertazzi's bodyguard. Johnny Valiant was a big-time wrestler, mainly for the WWF, and later on appeared as manager Johnny V there for a while in the 80s. Later became a comedian and all-around entertainer, would go around to conventions and stuff. Sadly passed away in, I believe, 2018, crossing a street. He was hit by a car.
Wow. Damn.
Also went to military academy when he was a teenager, and his roommate was a young Vince McMahon.
Ah, that's funny.
Yeah.
Now that all makes sense.
A comment made by Carmine Lupertazzi to Tony Soprano, "A Don doesn't wear shorts," was added into the show after series creator David Chase was contacted by a supposed real-life mafia associate who praised him on the authenticity of the show, with the exception that Tony often wears shorts, which he said a real Don would never do. So that's why that comment was in there. A Don doesn't wear shorts. For All Debts, Public and Private is one of only two Sopranos episodes in which the end credits roll on top of a picture, the $20 bill in this case, instead of a black background. The other episode is Cold Cuts from season 5, and the only episode in which they do so for the entire duration of the credits. This episode has the strongest rating of any episode, with an estimated 13.43 million viewers for its initial airing. The city where Paulie Walnuts was arrested, Youngstown, Ohio, has the nickname Mobtown, USA.
Wow.
Yeah. So what are your thoughts?
I mean, with regards to what we're looking forward to the season 4, I mean, there's so much bright material. I mean, you got, as far as the family, we'll call the family is concerned, Tony has it set up. Seal is fine. You know, Seal is always going to be Seal. We're not worried about Seal yet. Paulie Walnuts he's always a wild card because it seems like he's older than Tony.
Right.
But it's almost like he looks up to Tony because he's always saying, remember this, remember this. He's like, you know, he's always trying to make him laugh. And Tony, I guess, is just going through this phase where he's just not feeling too much of Paulie right now. And that has Paulie in his feelings. So that connection with New York is going to be a problem. Chris, we've seen this over the course of the first 3 seasons. His drug use is getting more and more prevalent. Adriana has no problem calling him out on that. It's fine. They'll still look up to you, even though they find out you're a junkie. And then he slaps her in the face. That was several seasons ago, but it's still evident, you know, that he has these drug dependencies. And then again, Adriana, we know that her new best friend is an FBI agent, but she is not aware. So we don't know how much information she is going to give them. Yeah, we got a lot coming forward in season 4, bud.
A lot of stuff going on. And I think I messaged you when I watched this. And I said, if something happened to Tony, at this point, this is just at this point, like everything could be crazy later on. But at that point, I would only trust Silvio to look after Carmela and the kids. Christopher is just too crazy with his drug habits.
Yeah.
And Paulie's is unstable.
He's in his feelings. Paulie is always going to do what's best for Paulie first and foremost, which is I always thought was an interesting take on the character, considering what Tony, as the actual person, the actor, said about the role. I can play anything. I just don't want to be a rat, you know. And then seeing his fight or flight, because I think that's ultimately a reoccurring message for a lot of characters in this show. What are you going to do in a fight or flight situation? AJ passes out. Tony sometimes passes out. Christopher goes to drugs. Carmella goes to God. Paulie looks out for number one. Anytime he doesn't mind fighting. He's just fighting for number one first. So everybody's fight or flight gets tested in this show. We've seen several people up until this point. Junior, when pressed, he was willing to kill his nephew.
Right.
So that's
And
what I'm saying.
And then like you said, at Jackie Jr.'s funeral, he comes up. Oh, the cops are here.
And
He almost
ran.
leaves Bobby. He almost leaves Bobby.
Which is something that made guys don't do. Made guys don't run. It makes us look bad, but fight or flight, boom, you're gonna do whatever you got to do, and that's what I like. Everybody is the challenges aren't all going to be the same, but everyone is going to be put in a situation where they have to make a choice to fight or to run. Dr. Melfi, she's had several with Tony. The hit, the when she had to leave, for his, situation getting worse, and then given the opportunity to take him back after telling him all these situations are going to be confronted, and we see how people look. Dr. Muffy started drinking. So it's like, what do you do when your head is put towards the fire? And we're going to see that for a lot more people.
You also see with Paulie, his temper just gets set off with anything. We saw it early on in episode 2 where he steals the coffee machine.
The coffee, yeah.
Because that's ours and they're taking, I'm going to take something of theirs. And then when he goes and goes to pick up the money, steals money from the Russian had the money. All he had to do was pick it up. But this little bitty slight, and it spirals out of control.
Yep.
So let's go on to the second episode, No Show. 41st overall episode, written by David Chase and Terrence Winter, directed by John Patterson, originally aired on September the 22nd, 2002. The day after I got married for the first time. Day before was my wedding day. I was, I know exactly where I was. I was at the beach. We had to do a very short honeymoon, so it was only one. We were going back the next day. The Emmys were on that night. We were in the bar. There was only the two of us. The bartender gave us a deal since we were newlyweds gave us one drink for free. And we were just sitting there discussing with her. And she was talking about how she wishes I believe this was right. She wishes that she was at home watching The Sopranos. And she's like, but the Emmys are on tonight, so I'm going to watch the Emmys. I do remember that. Yeah. So by this point, it had really become that phenomenon. I mean, we're into the 4th season. I remember that clearly. Meadows' recent lack of drive continues to worry her parents. Carmella tries to discuss her failure to register for classes, but Meadow again uses Jackie Jr.'s death as an excuse. She eventually reveals that she hasn't registered because she hopes to travel to Europe with her friend Misty. Tony discusses the problem with Dr. Melfi, and she recommends a psychologist specializing in adolescence. Meadow agrees to see Dr. Wendy Kobler, who actually encourages Meadows' plans. Shout out to Dr. Wendy Kobler, played by the great Linda Lavin, played Alice on the sitcom Alice, folks. She's wonderful, wonderful actress. This prompts a protracted family argument where Meadow confronts Tony with the truth about his business life by calling him Mr. Mob Boss. Tony responds quite emotionally by telling her that he did everything he could to save Jackie. She flees the house, saying she has made up her mind. Meadow eventually goes to Columbia and registers for some courses while her parents worry if she has fled the country. Here we get into a major thing. You saw it a little bit in the previous episode, but this is a major plot point in this. Carmella's flirtation with Furio continues, and she continues to take pleasure in his morning visits to pick up Tony. I just made some coffee. Come in. Can I fix you something? Furio tells her that he's planning to buy a house, and she gets all excited about that. Later on, we'll see Furio like, I need to stay. There's something wrong with the car. I need to stay in the car. Just tell him I'm there. You know, he got to keep the RPMs at a certain.
I got to keep the RPMs, above 2 or 3. So awesome.
The crew have a birthday party for Albert Barisi at Vesuvio. Ralphie makes an off-color joke about Jenny Sack's weight. And folks, you're talking about ripples in a pond. This is ripples in a pond right here. Saying she has a 95, saying she has had a 95-pound mole removed from her ass. The amount of scrutiny that went into that joke by everybody, I don't even get it, but we'll get into later on. While Paulie Walnuts is incarcerated, Patsy and Little Paulie have arranged a sit down on his behalf to discuss Ralphie's division of jobs at the Esplanade site. It takes place at Vesuvio, and Silvio presides. After some haggling, they settle on 5 jobs, 3 no works and 2 no shows. And they take these jobs serious. They're there with their they're there with their seats and their hard hats on.
Hard hats on and umbrellas.
Paulie receives the first no-show job. Silvio announces that Tony wants Christopher as acting capo of Paulie's crew during his absence and gives Chris the second no-show job. This upsets Patsy, who believes he has seniority over Chris, as he's been a made man longer. Indeed, it was Patsy and not Christopher who negotiated the jobs in the meeting. The 3 no-work jobs are given to Paulie to distribute, and they go to Patsy, Benny, and Little Paulie. As they leave the meeting, Chris jokes to Silvio that the first thing he will do is get wings in his hair, much like the gray wing-like hair Paulie has on the side of his head. Silvio is not amused. He is also put out by the promotion, and he realizes that Chris is starting to usurp his place in Tony's inner circle. Chris later visits the construction site where Patsy, Benny, Little Paulie, Donnie K, and Vito are enjoying their no-work jobs. They are. It cracks me up every time he goes
sitting back.
The guys have noticed valuable fiber optic cables lying around. They mention this to Chris, and he seems interested. When the cables go missing, Tony immediately calls Chris in to reprimand him. Tony tells him he is not seeing the financial potential of the construction contracts and that he is angry about the unwanted attention thefts will bring to their involvement in the job. Christopher goes home to get high and complains to Adriana. He also replays the rebuke to crew members Patsy and Little Paulie, but Patsy insists Chris gave him a look that he took as a go-ahead. The inability to get good help. That's the problem.
Right. Patsy knew what he was doing.
Silvio approaches Tony about Patsy feeling marginalized by Chris's promotion. Tony doesn't seem too concerned. Patsy visits Silvio at the Bing and mentions some floor tiles at the site. Silvio tells them to steal them in spite of Tony's orders. Again, there's always the look or the comment. I don't feel bad for Patsy. No, I do feel bad for Patsy. Never mind. I do feel bad for Patsy because he's like, I gotta look. And then later on, like, you told me to do this.
You told me to do it. Flat out.
Following this theft, Jack Mazzarone finds Tony playing golf with Artie Bucco and tells him about what has happened. An infuriated Chris drives straight to the Esplanade site, despite being on his way to a prior engagement with Adriana at her mother's house. Chris argues with Patsy, and the argument turns to violence. When an African-American construction worker threatens to phone the police, Patsy makes a Ralph Bunche reference and beats him with a scaffolding pole. Adriana continues her friendship with Danielle, an undercover FBI agent, arranging to meet her at the Crazy Horse. When they meet, Adriana discusses her fears that she may be unable to have any children because of the complications of an abortion she had before she was with Christopher. Danielle has been pushing Adriana to reveal Chris's involvement with the mafia, so she is a little surprised with what she learned. However, she sympathetically offers to recommend a good OBGYN that her sister knows in New York. She has actually just had an infant herself. Chris and Little Paulie arrive at the club, and Chris gives Little Paulie some cocaine right in front of Danielle. Ralphie and Janice's relationship continues, and they are spending time at Janice's house. Tony arrives unexpectedly, and Ralphie hides upstairs. When Tony finds his shoe, he warns Janice about getting involved with Ralph, but she is not receptive. Little Paulie visits his Uncle Paulie in Youngstown, Ohio, and gives him the news from the sit-down. Polly asks if anyone has been to visit his mother, and little Polly tells him that nobody has, but that Tony sent a box of chocolate. Little Polly relays Ralph's joke from Albert's birthday party, which Polly does not find funny, very likely due to his budding partnership with Johnny Sack, as he himself had joked about Jeannie's weight before. Now we're getting into Polly's mindset. Oh, okay. He's mad about what happened with Ralphie and the score. He's mad at Tony about that score and feeling undermined by Tony, as well as the fact that Tony nor no one else has been to visit his mom. He sent a box of chocolate. I don't like Ralphie anyway. Yes, I know I made a joke about Jenny Sack, but I'm gonna use this.
Yep.
And he puts it in his pocket. Christopher and Adriana are spending the evening at Crazy Horse with Danielle. While the couple share a kiss, Christopher puts a hand on Danielle's thigh, which starts an argument between him and Adriana and prompts Danielle to leave. Chris claims Danielle put his hand on her thigh, and Adriana chooses to believe him. She stops returning Danielle's calls. When Danielle persists in calling, Adriana calls back, telling Danielle not to see her anymore. The FBI decided to bring Adriana in and reveal Danielle's true identity, Special Agent Deborah Cicerone. Agent Harris accompanies Agent Cicerone to pick up Adriana. She's taken to meet with Chief Frank Cubitoso, where the agents tell her she can choose between up to 25 years in prison for possession and intent to supply cocaine, with an additional possible consequences: a retribution by Tony Soprano for bringing an undercover agent to his and Montesante's homes and the club, or begin cooperating with them by answering some questions. Overly anxious and extremely upset, Adriana promptly vomits all over the table and Chief Cubitoso.
All over him. All over him. You want to talk about somebody being scared out of their life. That right there was it, because she heard everything they had to say and then projectile.
The title refers to the way mobs assign paid jobs at a construction site to workers who never have to show up but continue to be paid. The title also refers to Meadows' decision. No show is the airline code for passengers who have bought the ticket, but they do not show themselves at check-in points, and therefore they miss the flight. Silvio, Patsy, and Little Polly discuss the no-show and no-work jobs for Polly's crew. In To Save Us All from Satan's Power, Polly tells Tony that Tommy Angeletti, a contractor in Ralphie's Esplanade project, owes him $100,000 from betting on college basketball. Since Ralphie held out Angeletti for more money, he is unable to pay back his debt. Polly requests that Tony give him the jobs as compensation. When Chris and Patsy get into a fight at the construction site, Chris warns Patsy that he didn't forget about his sniffing Adriana's underwear. Patsy responds that it wasn't him. This is a reference to the incident in Second Opinion, wherein Polly and Patsy barge into Adriana's apartment, demanding their cut of Chris's score of designer shoes. While searching around, Chris spots Polly, not Patsy, sniffing Adriana's underwear. While talking to Dr. Kobler, Meadow mentions that she was irritated by Junior singing Italian ballads at Jackie Jr.'s wake and the attendees' sentimental reactions, which had taken place in Army of One. So that's where we're headed. We can see where a few different avenues where we're all going to intersect later on. They're doing a great job in setting up these episodes.
Everything. Big time facts.
And so I'll tell you, the next episode, when I started it, I thought they were going one way, but they didn't, because of the episode title, Christopher. Third episode of season 4, 42nd overall episode of the series, written by Michael Imperioli and Mario Laureano, and directed by Tim Van Patten. It originally aired on September the 29th, 2002. Silvio wants to take action against Native Americans protesting the Columbus Day Parade, believing their actions are insulting to Italian Americans. Without Tony's approval, he, Patsy, and Artie attempt to break up the demonstration. As they are being warned by police, little Polly has a glass bottle thrown at him, and several other members of his party are injured. In this word, Artie locks himself in the car. We again see the fight or flight response. And I was thinking about an old Ray Stevens song, The Ballad of the Blue Cyclone, where the guy's singing and he gets beat up by some professional wrestlers. And his friend had locked himself in the car. And the song goes on, and he tells his friend that he's going to get revenge by getting even bigger guys. And his friend says, I'd do the same darn thing if it had been me. He said, I got in the car. He says, I got in the car, and something must have happened because the door locks jammed when I was trying to get out to help. I thought about that when I saw Artie in the car. Because Artie was looking, but Artie was like, this is not my fight.
Bro, he was so gung ho to be a part of it, man. And then to again, like we said, faced with fight or flight, he flew.
Yep. Tony blames Silvio for intervening. Ralphie threatens the protest leader, Professor Del Redclay, with publicizing the fact that Iron Eyes Cody, a popular Native American figure, is actually an Italian American. And folks, if you don't know, go and look up pollution commercial Native American. It's the guy who has a tear in his eye. And they're correct. They're correct. He was an Italian American. Tony appeals to Assemblyman Ron Zellman and an Indian chief to convince Redclay to cancel the protest. Although this fails, the chief invites Tony and his crew to his casino. Both of the parade and protest occur without mob intervention, which upsets Silvio. Tony tries to calm him down by telling him how proud he should be for what he has achieved in his life and not just his heritage. Be proud of who you are, what you've achieved, not of what your heritage is. Meanwhile, at a luncheon meant to instill Italian pride in women, the mob wives feel singled out when the speakers discuss the stereotypes associated with Italian Americans. After the luncheon, Gabriella lectures Father Phil about how much of the mob wives, especially Carmela, have given to the parish, and says he had no right to bring in a guest speaker who intended to shame them about how they make a living. Meanwhile, Paulie begins to create tensions between the Soprano and Lupertazzi families when he tells Johnny about Ralphie's joke about his wife and Tony's sale of Junior's warehouse, just stirring that pot. Johnny contacts Tony and demands a share of the warehouse profit and wants to keep Ralphie away from him. Now, you had the previous season, Ralphie actually going to Johnny Sack about Tony.
About Tony.
Johnny Sack sitting them both down and kind of, banging out a disagreement. And now the tables have turned. And again, Paulie in prison just stirring that pot.
Stirring the pot. Look, Tony didn't necessarily want Johnny Sack in Jersey in the first place.
No, he was very concerned. Remember?
Right. But now that we've got, he's there, and this is the reason why Tony didn't want Johnny in Jersey, because it's impossible not to have people with an affection for Johnny Sack, considering who he is. He's the head capo for Carmine. He's Sil to Carmine Lupertazzi. So you definitely want his ear, and it's only complicating things. But you're absolutely right. Ralphie was originally loved by the New York family, and now he quickly changed the game.
Big time thing happens here. While stuck in traffic, Bobby receives a phone call from his son, who relays a message from Bobby's wife, Karen, asking him to buy some food on the way home. Bobby is annoyed about the errand, but later feels remorse after discovering his wife died in the accident that was causing the very traffic jam he had complained about. And we see that because we see her get into the van after the talk that Father Phil had arranged.
Mm-hmm.
And then we see, away from Bobby's point of view, the van turned over. The mob wives feel sympathy for Bobby during Karen's wake and quietly discuss his having never taken a Gumar. Now, this has thrown me off. I use HBO Max to watch the show. Every time I turn it on, the closed captions are on. I don't know why I don't turn them on, but every time, like if I turn them off, the next time I go back, they'll be turned on. But a lot of times I don't get dialogue, so I just keep them on. The captioning always spells it Goomar, Gumar.
Mm-hmm.
The actual word is spelled Comare. but pronounced Gumar. So it throws me off.
It starts with a C, but
Yes,
it's pronounced
with
Gumar.
a hard G. Yes.
That's dope. I love the language.
Yeah. But the closed captioning does it phonetically. Goo
Gumar.
Gumar. Yes.
Gumar.
Ralphie believes Rosalie in order to move in. Ralphie leaves Rosalie in order to move in with Janice. However, after spending time with the widowed Bobby, Janice is touched by a sincere grief for his lost wife. You talking about a man. That Bobby is in some serious grief for his wife. After discussing her relationship problems with her therapist, who recommends that she not choose partners who are similar to her brother or father, Janice hastily breaks up with Ralphie. The argument ends with her causing him to lose his balance and fall down a flight of stairs, injuring his back. Janice locks herself in her room as Ralphie hobbles back to his car, bags in hand. So Janice sees a new man in her life, and her therapist says, "You need to get away from dating your brother or your father."
Right.
The title refers to Christopher Columbus. I thought it was Christopher Moltisanti that we were going to.
Right.
An Italian explorer and navigator who completed 4 voyages across the Atlantic Ocean. As mentioned by Furio, Columbus was born in Genoa, in the north of Italy, and is increasingly a controversial figure. In 2020, many statues of Columbus were moved in the United States in the wake of the protests following the killing of George Floyd. The episode, I found this fascinating. The episode created a controversy in real life when cast members of The Sopranos, specifically Dominic Chianese, who plays Uncle Junior, and Lorraine Bracco, who plays Dr. Melfi, were banned from marching in the Columbus Day Parade in New York City, despite having received an invitation to participate in the event from New York City Mayor Michael Bloomberg. Because of this episode, this was happening. Columbus Day happened right after this episode, and it sparked real life controversy over the very things that happened in this episode. And they were barred from marching in the parade. They've been invited by the New York mayor himself.
That is news to me, man. I tell you.
And Joe Pantoliano won the Primetime Emmy Award for Outstanding Supporting Actor in a Drama Series at the 55th Primetime Emmy Awards in 2003 for his work in this episode and Whoever Did This. So he won the award for Best Supporting Actor for this episode, and also he submitted this episode, and he also submitted Whoever Did This, which we'll get to probably in a couple of episodes. I believe it's later on in the series. So, overall thoughts about this episode and the group of episodes that we've seen.
Well, I don't know what's coming from Johnny Sack. We've seen people walk on stage and open hand slap grown men because their wives were offended. So I can
Right.
only imagine what a fictitious person will do in this world created with mobsters and mob wives. Like Johnny Sack would defend his wife to the T because that's what Johnny Sack's supposed to do. And Paulie recognizes that and is playing on that so hard as to get back at Tony. But here's something I haven't even said anything about. Furio and Carmela. That has the potential to be wild because Furio is not the painter or the no, he's not him. Furio got some stones. Furio's
Right.
killed a couple people.
Right.
So, is Furio, when pushed with a position, when propositioned, would Furio stay loyal to the family or would he stay loyal to himself? Because we know Carmela, she'll say what she will about wanting to be faithful, but slowly but surely she creeps. She puts a toe in the water.
Right.
And if you show her that you're there with her, then she's right there for it. So I'm curious to see, what we're gonna get from Furio and Carmela. Didn't get a whole lot of AJ in these first couple of, not a whole lot, but We got to figure something out. Got to figure something out with that kid, man. We got to figure out what's going on with the kid. We don't know what we're doing.
He was very instrumental in this episode, though, talking about Columbus, and he's reading his book, and it upset his father greatly. But and I feel like there was a lot of mature conversation around the issue in the episode. Like Furio brought up his points. He's like, "Look, even in Italy, he's not all of that." And they're like, "What do you mean?" And he explains why. Yeah. Look, he did this, he did this, he did this, and he did this. And they take a moment, and I think what Tony says, it mentioned it earlier in the description, but it's the end of the episode. Look, you can be proud to be Italian, but be proud of what you've done. Mm-hmm. Not that you're offended just because you're Italian and you feel like everything's been taken away from you. You're proud because you're Italian and everything that you've done, not what somebody else is.
And I think the chief that he met, I think Tony does a really good job of, I'm not going to say bastardizing advice, but he does do a good job of taking advice that someone has given him and morphing it to work with what he has going on. Right. Because we've seen that countless times with Dr. Melfi. She'll say something, especially when it came to his mom. She'll say something, and then he is throwing that information right at there. But I mean, it's like, she didn't even know he had a psychiatrist. I'm not going to do it. I'm not going to do it.
But I thought about that. You're right. Remember when the Meadows' friend had the attempt?
Yeah.
And Tony's like, it was a gesture. It was a gesture because he had heard it from Dr. Melfi.
Yep, he had heard all that from Dr. Melfi. That was the coach episode, with the soccer team,
yeah. And then Tony's quick to tell Silvio he also wants Frankie Valli for his thing. So you got to call Frank. I hadn't seen Frankie in a long time. You got to make the call.
You got to make the call.
And we'll see Frankie later on. Frankie plays a character in real life later on. We will see Frankie. But that is it. Big time things coming up. I'm excited for season 4. A lot of stuff happening in season 4, folks. Next time we'll go to the racetrack. We'll have some more with Paulie stirring the pot from prison.
Hi, oh my.
We will have continuing escalating situation between Ralphie and Johnny Sack. Christopher falling further and further down a rabbit hole. Christopher and Silvio getting sent to take care of the Johnny Sack issue and going into the strangest place in Delaware that I have. We'll talk more about that when we get there, as well as the continuing Cold War between Carmela and Tony, a new female component to Tony coming in. Escalation between Furio and his feelings toward Carmela and her reciprocal feelings. Furio gets called back home, at least temporarily, and finds out some information there. So all of that coming up. But TJ, in the meantime, tell everybody everything that they need to know about you.
Well, the first thing I'm going to say is Adriana. Let's just make sure that you keep your eyes on Adriana, a.k.a. I can't even remember her character's name, but she was very important to Sons of Anarchy. She does she's a good actress. I give her love. She's a good actress. If you want to hear more of my sophomore comedic stylings, you can do that on the Joey Harris Show with that guy right there. He and I, link up every so often, and I get to put my stank on it. But if you're looking for, I've got catalogs of stuff, man. With the Tokyo Smoke Show and the Yam Highbrow Podcast, they can be found on iTunes and Spotify. I'm not on social, so you can't follow me, but follow him. And then if you got a question for me, tell him, and then he'll hit me up on the Joey phone.
I will relate it.
Yeah.
On the Joey phone. It's like on the Joey phone, but different.
Joey, man, as always, brother. Thank you.
Thank you, TJ. At the Joey Harris on most social media, joeyharriscomedy@gmail.com. Don't forget to like, share, subscribe, all of that on this. Help us continue to grow the show. Yeah, right there at the bottom, right in the corner. You can do it. Thumbs up. TJ, thanks a lot, and we will see you all next time.